order for the July 10th meeting, Finance Committee meeting. It's a regular meeting. Therefore, this is an official. We do have a quorum. So just to have an introduction, my name is Randy Sotomayor. I'm the Vice Chair, sorry, for the Finance Committee.
Like Gann, a member, past planning commission chair.
Joe Norris, member of the Finance Committee.
Past town manager or town person.
Past councilman and past town treasurer.
I thought I recognized the name. So, okay. All right. And then I'll introduce myself, I guess. Is that the protocol? Okay. Chuck Stevens. I'm the new town manager for the town of La Plata.
Okay, cool. And we have with us Karina Larson.
Karina Larson, treasurer of the place.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have approval of the June 12th meeting.
I had no issues with it when I saw it, so make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second,
Okay. I would have to abstain because I was not here. So we would have to move this item to the next meeting. Okay, and then our next item on the agenda is matters of discussion with our town manager. So we have a Q&A session. Feel free to ask any questions, or if you have any questions for us,
Sure.
you're more than
Sure.
welcome. So this is free for all questions, Q&A.
Great. Could we start with kind of giving each other a little bit more of a discussion about our backgrounds than
Yeah, I think
just
that'd
the
be great.
name?
Yeah.
Could you start with it?
Sure, happy to. All right, thanks for the question. What a great opening. So I'm Chuck Stevens and I'm the town manager. I'm not here quite a month yet. I started on June 16th. So I'm coming to you from a background service. I served in the United States Marine Corps for about 25 years on active duty, just under 25 years. I retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. And when I finished that job, I was one of those that I left on a Friday in uniform and I came right back on Monday wearing a suit and tie as a GS civilian. So I retired and then came into very, very similar work, working for the Marine Corps as a GS 14 in the federal government system. So, and I did that for about 3 years. And then I saw there was an opportunity in Durango, Colorado for La Plata County. I have an IT background. I was a communications officer in the Marine Corps. And that's what I did for the bulk of my career. And there was a position working in the basement of the IT department in Durango. And I applied for that and I got it. And I had a team of 5 individuals that I led. And I did that for about 18 months. And then the assistant county manager position came open. I was encouraged by a woman who is now my mentor, who literally just texted me an hour ago because we are still unbelievably close. And she was going to be the county manager. She'd been with the county at that point about 28 years, 29 years. And she asked if I would be willing to apply to be the assistant county manager. She saw something in me and I can't thank her enough. So I applied, competed for that position, was hired, served as her deputy or as the assistant county manager for about 15 months or so. As soon as she hired me, about the first couple of weeks, she came in, she said, okay, now you need to take over. I was like, oh, okay, great. So, but that was great. It was a really steep learning curve, but I learned a lot from her. She continues to be active, even though she's retired. She's still a senior advisor for ICMA. and for CCCMA, the Colorado chapter. ICMA is the International City County Managers Association. If you're familiar with it, it's the professional organization for city county managers. In the states, you have has one, and she's a senior advisor there. So she retired. I was appointed as the interim. There was an open recruitment and competition for the county manager position. I competed, was interviewed, had to go through run the gauntlet, similar to the process here. There was a public meet and greet with the public. There was the interview with the leadership team. It was the full gamut. It certainly wasn't a rubber stamp. And so was hired to be the county manager, and that's where I served for the past. It was right at 6.5 years. I took that position in January of 19, and then I left that position in June of 2025. So it was right at 6.5 years where I served as the chief executive officer and the budget officer for La Plata County. And then I came to you from here. So you're the finance committee. So I'm sure you want to know about my financial chops. So let's just get right into it. The county budget and budgeting in Colorado is somewhat unique. I think it is unique in the United States in that they have something called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which means that any increase in taxes has to go to a ballot, has to be approved by the voters. Okay.
Wow.
Which means that the elected body to adjust the mill levy or the property taxes according to their budgetary needs. So TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, was passed, I believe it was in 92. And the citizens, the residents of La Plata County, have never voted to increase their taxes, 0 times. So the mill levy was set in 1982. The last sales tax was implemented very near there, maybe 93 or 94, which means that the county has been operating on revenue streams that were identified and set in the early 90s. And here we are in 2025. So we had some really significant challenges with our budget at times. And it was that environment that I think really caused me to get very forced me to educate myself on governmental budgeting, fund accounting, those kinds of things, and how to be creative with where you can find money and how you can squeeze another penny out of a fund or blood from a turnip or whatever, right? And we had a pretty good run. We had some tight years. And we had some years that weren't as tight. We were able to do a lot of things that I'm incredibly proud of. As the county was growing, the county was a mid-sized county in Colorado, about 1,700 square miles, about 700 miles of county roads that we maintained, about 56,000 people in the county. We had 3 municipalities. So we were firmly a mid-sized county, 500 full-time equivalents. But we weren't at 500 when I took over. We were at about 420. And so as the county was growing, the service delivery and the demands on the staff, in my opinion, weren't keeping pace. And so even with the budgetary constraints and the economic pressures that we were facing, we were able to grow our staff, I think, to levels that really served our community well. Now that's a big jump from 420 to 500. That's 80 people. In full transparency, 48 of those people came in 2024 when we created a health department. We didn't have one before. We created one. That was 48 people. So if you strip the health department out, we grew the staff by about 40 people over a 6-year period. And I'm really proud of that work. I'm also incredibly proud of the investment that we made in our workforce. When I took the position, there hadn't been a merit increase for years, even when I was working in IT and as the deputy. If there was anything, there was no cost of living adjustment, period. So just nothing. And if there was any adjustment at all, there were some years where the workforce would get a 1 or a 1.5% increase. okay, but employees there also had to pay a share of their benefits coverage for medical, vision, and dental. We literally had years where the 1 or
Wasn't
1.5%,
keeping up.
and we had a net loss in employees' paychecks. So morale was pretty rough at times, and our turnover was pretty significant. And so I'm really proud of how I was able to work with my finance director to figure out where we could find some efficiencies and create some savings and how we could reinvest back in our workforce. And I'm happy to talk about that in detail if you like, but for now, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I'm happy that we were able to give, we called it a market increase. We didn't call it a cost of living, but for all the budgets that I created while I was there, there was at least a 3% market. And then for all the years that I was there, we did, except for this past year, we did a two, we did a merit. I can't remember if it was a 2 and a 3 or a 2 and a 4. So there was opportunity, not only there was a little bit of a market adjustment, and there was opportunity for recognition of high performers in the organization as well. But our investment in our benefits is really where I was most proud. We implemented a number of programs that I'm incredibly proud of. I think we're the only organization in the Four Corners region. I'm sorry, La Plata County's in the southwest corner of the state. So you're thinking Colorado, you're probably envisioning Denver. Nowhere near Denver. That's 6.5 hours away. I was 3 hours away from Albuquerque. So my house was about 35 minutes from the New Mexico border. So southwest corner, we're in the Four Corners region, about an hour and a half away from the Four Corners Monument. So in the region, I think we enacted one of the first parental leave programs that I'm aware of. We offered 12 weeks of paid parental leave, regardless of whether you were the mom or the dad or the adopted mom or dad. We didn't make a distinction. You were starting a family, and we had a very broad definition of what a family was. We were going to give you 12 weeks of parental leave. I'm still really proud of that. That's probably one of the accomplishments there that we were able to put into place that I really thought was something that the employees needed and took great advantage of. There was a 1-year vesting period. So when we created the health department, we did hire some people that were already in their 3rd trimester, and they're like, we're going to get, and I'm like, oh, no, we are asking that you're an employee for 1 year. So FMLA, are you familiar with FMLA?
Family
Yeah, the Family Medical Leave Act. The state rolled out, oh, I'm sorry, not FMLA, Family, FAMLI. It was a state program, very similar, came out, and we had the option of opting in or not. And our organization, we looked at what the state was going to mandate if we opted in. And our organization said our benefits exceed these, we're going to opt out. And we were the only government that I'm aware of in that region that opted out. Our benefits exceeded what the state was championing as they were throwing a bone to the workforce. And so really proud of that. And we were able to do it and balance the budget. When I present my budgets to my board of county commissioners, the first thing I say is, commissioners, we're proud to present to you a budget that conforms to the state law, right? It's the first statement out of my mouth. Okay. It's always on my mind as the budget officer. We've got rules, and you've got to comply with the rules. There's rules, and then there's best practices. And I'm also proud to say that all my budgets not only were legally compliant, but we also followed the best practice of not using our fund balance or our reserves to cover operating expenses. Okay. And there's a temptation to do that. At one point, the county had a very, very large reserve, significant, upwards of $40 million. Now the budget was about $150 million budget year over year, but that was excessive. And our citizens called us on it. They're like, you're sitting on a mountain of cash and you're telling us you don't have money. And they were right. And so we had a group just like this. We called it Long-Term Finance Committee. and not finance committee. And I've already told Karina, I am never going to get that programming out of my head. You know, I'm working on the plate of La Plata, but you're going to be long-term finance, whether you like it or not. So in my mind.
I think we talk and think that way.
And so we asked them to review our fund balance policy and to develop recommendations, which the board absolutely adopted. And then we responsibly spent down that fund balance so that we could look our residents in the eye and say, okay, we don't have money and we're not sitting on a pile of cash. And we invested that money into infrastructure, and we did a lot of good with that money. And that fund balance had just built up over time because of the leadership at the time was just incredibly conservative. And they wanted to save for the rainy day. And you can go check the recording on this, but I was the county manager when COVID hit. And as we got through COVID, I remember building the budget for the next year, and I remember going to the board and saying, global pandemic, if this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what we're saving for. Okay. We have weathered the global pandemic. 2 years prior to that, one of the primary economic drivers in our community, the Durango-Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, tourist destination, Durango, there was a wildland fire in the county, 56,000 acres burned in the county. We had to shut down the train's operations for about 30 days. It was going to be Armageddon, right? This is what everybody told us. They came into the boardroom and you can't do this. You can't. It's going to kill us. Tourism, you know, like the money, it's going to dry up. We're going to go bankrupt. Okay. We didn't. We managed through that. We managed through the pandemic. And I remember going to the board and saying, we need to spend our reserves. We have a diverse revenue stream. We're going to be okay. And we were. So that's probably a good point for me to pause and just maybe field questions or hear your backgrounds, however you'd like to.
I'll tell you, I've ridden on the Durango River.
You've ridden on it?
Mhm.
Did you do the full day to Silverton?
Um,
Because I hope not.
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, because that's a long day.
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But you get, you know, the 52 miles of Silverton, and you get there and you get off and you get a bite to eat. Then you got to get back on and come all the way down. So they have a bus. You can take the train, and then the train will bus you back, and it goes a lot faster. That's the way to do it. So.
Well, I would propose we kind of give us backgrounds of ourselves. So we
That'd
all
be
know
great.
that, and then go to questions.
Okay.
Would that work?
Whatever. Mr. Chairman, whatever.
Um, So I've been with the Charles County Public School System, Board of Education, since 1996. I started out as their budget manager and then became director and finally assistant superintendent for finance. We had similar challenges as you've experienced. At the time, we did share our employee benefits. It was 25/75. And I don't know what percentage it is now. But we had a Cadillac health insurance program, and I think we still do. And I think that is what was crucial in hiring teachers. Because the
Agreed.
salaries wasn't up to par, but we said, listen, the location where we are, half hour away from Washington, D.C. So we have a great benefits package, and I think that's what sold a lot of the teachers, even though there is a teacher shortage. But we managed to get what we can out of the pool. We did have a healthy fund balance as well. We grew our health fund balance, but I think as you experienced the COVID, it did hit our fund balance pretty hard. I was not there. I left before COVID, but they did have to dip into a lot of the fund balance. One of the rules I had as superintendent was we're using only our fund balance for one-time expenditures.
Right.
We're not using it for salaries, even though we had unions to deal with and say, hey, you're holding on a lot of money, we need additional COLA. That was a battle of contention for us. But we managed to get through that. And we did invest a lot in one-time expenditures. Computers was a major expenditure. Recycling those 5-year computers was a major expenditure for us, for all the school systems, all the schools. So those were challenges. My pride and joy was that the school system did not go through any rifts. A lot of the other school systems did. They had to lay off a lot of what we call instructional assistants. But we did not RIF any employee, which I thought that was an amazing feat for us. So other than that, we go through all of our fund balance and prioritize our year-end wish list, so to say. Capital improvements was a major consideration for us because at one point, La Plata was growing astronomical, and we had to build a school every year. And that really put a toll on our fund balance and our operating budget.
Yeah.
But we managed through that. We did get some relief from the state. At that time, they had a lot of grants, one-time grants, the American, can't remember
The American Rescue Plan.
Yeah, the American Rescue Plan. We used that money for our capital expenditure. So that, everything comes to, we try to maneuver all these challenges, and then money filters in and said, okay, let's dissect it and cut where we can.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's my brief experience in highlights.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, but it might not be.
So let's go with Joe first.
It's interesting how I've ended up focusing on finances, because I went to college to be an English teacher or a writer.
Okay.
But I majored in Student Union 101, Hearts and Pinochle, and realized that I was about to flunk out, and I made a mistake, which turned out to be one of the best mistakes ever. I quit the school and then decided I want to go to a different school to get something more technical. It was about a 2-week break and I got drafted, and it's Vietnam. And so I knew I'd go to Nam, I'd be in the Army or the Marines, and I was not fond of guns. I said, what are my options? And they said, well, you can enlist. So I enlisted in the Air Force, and they gave me a job that I would have never thought, but it fit like a glove. I mean, I became a chart maker for the bombers. And then they stationed me in Hawaii for 3 years. So I'm technically a Vietnam vet, never went there. But I was in full support of the Vietnam episode with all the bombing and so forth. And loved that work. Loved it so much, I almost stayed in. Then to this day, I remember we had the base civil engineer came out to the site, and he gave us the 20-year plan. And I had no idea what a civil engineer was at the time, but he had me in the palm of his hand. I said, whatever it is he does, that's what I want to do. So I began right away to study engineering in University of Honolulu. Got my first year done before I got out. I almost stayed in. I talked to a recruiter and I said, I'm willing to stay in. And they said, well, we can send you to the school of your choice. I'd already made staff sergeant at the time. I was married. We'll give you a family allowance. You'll be paid as staff sergeant, fundamentally a civilian until you get your degree. And then I said, and then what? Then back to Texas for OCS. And I said, then what? He said, I don't know. I go, you'd invest all that in me and not guarantee that I'd be an engineer. So, yeah, we can't do that. I think they can now, but at that time.
Mhm.
So I said, I don't know if I like that. He said, well, take a short, re-up for 6 months. So I did that. And during that time period, I decided as a Vietnam vet, I had an extra year of GI Bill. So I said, I think I can better guarantee my future as an engineer with the GI Bill. So I got out. Having been in Hawaii, this was an opportunity to drive across the country for 30 days. We went all over the states until we got home because I was released from the Air Force in Oakland and we drove all the way across the country. So it was a great vacation for my wife and I, who had just been married by that time, about 3 years. And went to University of Maryland, got my degree as a civil engineer, went to work for it's Baltimore Gas Electric Company. I guess their owner now is Constellation. It's changed over the years, but then it was Ma and Pa Gas, worked downtown Baltimore, and wanted to go after my master's in civil engineering. Took a night course for 1 semester, then that program collapsed. Not enough students. But then I realized I didn't know anything about money. And I found that my job was always getting in, what's this project going to cost? So I pursued my MBA at a different school, Loyola in Baltimore. And also got my registration as a professional engineer. And so 3 Mile Island occurred in '79, 2 years after I graduated. And suddenly a whole bunch of us were picked up by the collar, sent to Calvert Cliffs. And that became my new home.
Hmm.
My wife and I grew up in Baltimore City. They said, you're going to go to Lusby. Culture shock was just too much. So I drew a map on the chart. So I want to be within a 50-mile radius, or I want to keep my commute under an hour. And La Plata fell on that. So we checked it out and been here ever since. Moved here in '86. And then I had 2 things happen. One almost caused me to leave engineering, and the other, I left the company. I actually retired at 55, left the company, and came to La Plata to work for a small engineering firm here that's no longer in existence. The guy was running the business, was really smart. He was dual licensed, both civil engineering and surveying, and was running a really good operation. He hired a bunch of graybeards like ourselves. He had a really good staff, but then the market hit. This was in 2007, 2008 time period. And he had this premise that he was much younger than us. He had this premise that if I hire more people, I'll bring in more business, like a network marketing thing. Didn't work. And I became his COO during that time period. I went in, I said, I'm firing the COO. And I went back to Constellation. First person I talked to, they said, you can't come back. You already retired. And I said, well, when I left, the vice president said, if you ever need to come back, do so. Next thing you know, I get a call from somebody else. I could come back. So I had 2 retirements from the same company. And I've retired 9 years ago now. But the other reason why I almost left was my interest in finances. I'm a registered financial advisor. I'm not a certified, but I'm registered. And I was doing taxes and advising family and friends on finances and so forth. And it was my brother who called me up. He had been in CDs at the time. He said, Dad, he said, Mike, I think I can get into something a little bit more risky. And we had a long conversation about mutual funds, stocks. And he asked for some of the details on the mutual funds, and I sent him a perspective. He's the only person I knew who's ever read one. And he had a lot of questions. And at the end of the conversation, I said, well, he was satisfied. I was satisfied. Some people get paid to do this. So I actively pursued leaving the role as engineering, moving into the finance world. At that time, that was in the '90s. So my youngest wasn't even born yet. So I was mid-career, young kids. And I realized that that process would require me to start over. And financially, I couldn't handle that. But I did find a way to get into that business part-time. So it's been kind of like a part-time pays pin money hobby. And my whole interest is really educating people and that, not so much for the money. So I did fine as an engineer. And so I retired from the engineering world in in 16, 9 years ago. I guess around 2011, I got on the planning commission for the first time. And then my job required me to travel a lot. I had become the general supervisor of engineering, and we had 3 nuclear sites. So I had to go to New York a lot. So I pulled myself off the committee for a while. And then when that changed, I was back at Calvert Cliffs. I got back on it, ultimately became the chair. I think you were one of the reasons why I got on it the first time. I think you had said, dropped my name or something. And then, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I became the chair. And 2 years ago, I finally said, my term is ending. I'm not going to repeat. Okay. And I think we left it in pretty good hands. And it was a great experience. And that memory will often come up when we have discussions here at the Finance Committee.
Okay.
And I did mention the theater.
Mhm.
So kind of what you guys went through during COVID, I was a business manager, treasurer. We had decided in January to refinance our mortgage because we have a mortgage on the theater with the purpose of taking cash out to totally upgrade our sound system. 2 months later, COVID hit. No income, brand new mortgage. We still have to pay, utilities and insurance and all of that stuff. I really fine tooth combed our expenses. That was the first thing we did. We learned out that we were spending some money we didn't need to. And then heavy into grants. And there was a particular federal grant that really helped us. Had to be the most difficult grant I've ever worked on. It was called something Shuttered Venues Operating Grant. So it was specifically for the arts and culture. And when I'm filling this out on the financial spread, it was like a spreadsheet. There was this little box at the bottom. The number would change every time I change a number up here, indicating how much you could get. And that number was so good. I said, I'm going to pay hell to get through this process. And apparently a lot of people didn't, because when we got the grant, our annual budget was around $300,000. The grant was for, I do my math right, 130,000, something like that, which was huge. And then like 2 months later, they gave us half again as much. So I think they had this pot and not enough people went through the process of applying. That saved our butt. And we got some ARPA grants and so forth. So we actually took it. The plan to put in the sound system included not having one of our shows go dark to do all that work. So in that case, COVID was a blessing because it took us a lot longer to do that work than one show being down. But now the theater's got state-of-the-art sound system, not state-of-the-art lighting yet, but we're working on that. That's next.
All right.
And so I continue as the business manager and the treasurer. And when I was invited to apply for this group, I said, hey, with my planning commission background, I've been in the town for 30 some years now. And my financial background, I'd love to participate. So far, they haven't kicked me off.
Great. Thank you, sir.
I'll start out saying I'm a local boy that has never been very far from La Plata. In some ways, I don't have as interesting a background as some of my comrades here, but a good part of my life, I was either in business of one kind or another. And I did some building, started out working for my brother in a full service car wash, or we kind of ran it together, and I was going to go off in business for myself, and actually in parts business. And he decided he could afford to sell me interest in the car wash business. This was over in Alexandria, Virginia. And so I did that for a while, and then I was still living here, and didn't like to commute, and it's kind of a pressure business in a way. But so I came down here and played with real estate a little bit, and then got into the building. And I guess around in the early 90s, a buddy of mine was running for county commissioner, and he wanted me to be his treasurer for his campaign. And meantime, I kind of gave me the bug, and I decided at the time the county treasurer position was an elected position. It no longer is. And I decided I wanted to run for that, even though really I didn't have financial background, but it really is not a financial office. It is a tax collector. We invested the money, and the investments were so plain vanilla by state law
Exactly.
that it wasn't a problem. I knew I could handle it without any problem. So I was elected, and next thing, close to the end of my second term, I got a visit from the folks over here. And because I was a treasurer for the county, they certainly thought that I could be the treasurer for the town. And I explained to them, it's totally different position. Oh, you can do it, Joe. You can do it. And one of the guys was a CPA, the mayor, and he's telling me I can do it. And so I took a leap and did it. Paid better money, didn't have to run for office, whatever. So anyway, I came here, and I was here 2002, I think to 2009. Anyway, I loved it. And I might would have stayed on, but I really wanted to see somebody professional coming into the position, because it never happened at that time, but it looked like what is now our giant community over here, we thought was going to be coming off the ground. But of course, about that time is when the, big recession. It wasn't quite I guess, a depression, but it felt like a depression. Anyway, we started searching for somebody, and the fellow was CPA, was with one of the larger towns in Prince George County, so he had a great background for it. And anyway, did that, and I'd always been interested very much in the town. As a matter of fact, on our 100th anniversary in '88, I was chairman of the Centennial Committee back then, so I've always loved the town. Anyway, so I decided I was going to try and run for council, and so I did run for the council, and was successful, and was there for 2 terms, and was excused after the second term by somebody that ran a heck of a lot better campaign than I did. But anyway, so um, just by being around it, I hoped I could contribute something, even though I don't have the professional background of these folks. And really the other two are great committee members. I can tell you, I had told Karina, I was shocked at the quality that, this is a new committee, as you probably know.
I watched your first meeting. I was still interviewing, so I was watching everything.
Okay.
I saw your first meeting. I believe it was you presented to the council at one of the meetings because somebody wasn't available.
Oh, somebody wasn't, that's right. That's correct. But anyway, that's my thing. I'm still interested in the town,
Which ward did you represent?
Ward 4.
Ward 4. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
Ward 4 has expanded,
Yeah.
changed a little bit since, well, I guess with the 2000 census,
okay.
you know, we looked at it, but
Well, great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. The background. That's very helpful. So
So I do have some questions.
fire away. Yes, sir.
There's three things in my mind. Two are really on my mind because of my involvement in this committee in the beginning. And the other is just because I'm a citizen in the town. So let me start with that one first. And tie it back to what we've been learning, working with the departments. I live in the Clark's Run community, southeast side. So I'm Ward 4. And all the drainage there is galvanized pipe. And so now we've got more and more orange cones appearing all around town.
Because the pipes are
Right.
collapsing.
Yeah.
Right, they're aging out. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember Bobby was still the operations manager at the time, and my wife had gotten upset about this is a pretty significant hole in our yard, and she's concerned about the grandkids coming over and falling in a hole and all that. So after limited success with me, she called the town and somebody showed up. I was out walking in the morning and there's guys there. And there was this small hole at a stop sign. I live on a corner. There's a stop sign right there. And they were filling up this small hole. I said, what about that hole there? And the guy got upset with me. And he said, this is what your wife told us. He's trying to show it to me. I said, no, I'm pretty sure she was talking about that hole. This one, you might lose your stop sign here, but it's much less of a concern to us as citizen. And his reaction bothered me enough that I called Bobby. I knew Bobby pretty well because I mentioned I had worked for a local engineering firm.
Mhm.
He actually worked for me at the time. He
Okay.
ran the surveying group and I was the COO. So I knew him previously and also while he was here. And he said he would look into that, but he gave me the story that, you know, these pipes. I remember one time we actually had a terrific storm like last night, and there's a catch basin in my corner and a catch basin in my neighbor's corner, and it was a geyser shooting up. The pipe across the road just wouldn't work. And I remember when the crew came out to fix that. That's been quite a few years, but we were already aware of the degradation in the neighborhood. So a lady, she said, yeah, the priorities are the emergencies. That's fundamentally was the answer. And as a civil engineer, I would hope we'd have a better idea of having a preventive maintenance program in place. So we have a lot of catch up to do. If I could use three developments, Clark's Run, Quailwood, Kings Grant. I think it was about that order of them being built. They're probably all going to have similar issues. And at the theater, we've got similar ones too. There's a Van Gogh stop at Kent Avenue. A lot of people believe it's PTP property. Technically, it's county property. I think it's county property, Van Gogh. Although the substructure is town. So I get confused who owns it. Okay. And there's a cone there. And some people have been complaining to us that someone could get injured at that bus station. We maintain the lawn, but we can't do anything about that hole. So those things just tend to go on. So as a citizen,
Mhm.
if there's any influence you can provide to find a better way. I know that Karina's been talking about setting up a process to inventory all of this stuff, because apparently we didn't have one. That would be
Yeah.
great. You can
Yeah.
inventory by age, by condition and so forth. And it is evident to me that someone's done something along that line in Clark's Run, because there's markings all over the place now. I don't see the markings happening. I'm like Joe, I walk a lot. I walk the circles in Clark's Run all the time, so I get to see that. So that's the citizen's viewpoint. The two things that I've been really thinking about a lot here, maybe it's just one, it's the size of our police department. In my opinion, based on the size of our town, our police department is very large, and it's the largest expense for the company, right? Pretty close.
Take this budget, I believe they're at 42% of the budget for FY 26.
Okay, that's a big number.
Mhm.
And we have struggled as a committee with the council, if you saw the meeting, on this issue about the pension for the police.
Yes.
I think we're all firm that we do agree that because of the nature of their job, such a pension is important. But the idea of, there's only one way to do it. And it seems in the little bit of time we've had together, a little bit less than a year now, prohibitively expensive to pull that off for the long term. Because if we have someone who's working today and retires at 45 and lives to 100, that's a huge commitment that this town's taking on. And I think we struggle with how we're going to afford to pay that.
Yeah. So can I interject
Yeah.
there to respond to that? Because I think it's really important. Because this has been a debate that I've been watching play out on my computer screen now. So just to give you some reference, some frame of reference, I saw this position advertised the weekdays before Thanksgiving of 2024, and I saw it. We had been watching Charles County and La Plata for the last number of years for various reasons, and I went home that night and I talked to Jessica. I said, "You're not going to believe town of La Plata is looking for a town manager. Let's talk about it over the holidays." So I've been watching all of the meetings from the, May of 24 all the way through, just to build my situational awareness so I could speak intelligently during my interview.
Good for you.
Okay. So I've been watching this issue. So here's where I see finance committee, long-term finance or finance committee, and what your role is and what I'm going to ask of you to do this. All of you have a background in finance in some degree or another. And so when you see numbers on a page, you can intuitively see where it's going.
Yeah.
You see the train at the end of the tunnel, okay? Because you can look here and then you see those numbers and even the things that you just said in this moment, you said prohibitive. Like you just know it intuitively because you've been looking at numbers and you've been a COO and you've been in the school and dealing with these things. Okay, but what we have here is an elected body of citizens who want to serve their community. They may not have the background, right? So what we need to do, and this is what I've said to Karina probably 3 times now, and I've only been here for 3.5 weeks, is our job is going to be not to try and sway a decision one way or the other. Our job is to paint the picture and to present very technical information to our elected officials in a way that they can understand it and draw their own conclusions. Now, to you and to this committee, I think those conclusions are clear and obvious. Okay, but what we have to do is we have to build the case. It's like you're teaching calculus at the 4-year university, and we need to start with, basic math and addition
Yeah.
and get the electeds to the point where they can make an informed decision. And to do that, we've got to lay out the business case. And so I've already been talking to Karina and the police chief about comparator municipalities. Okay, because you made some statements there that I think are going to be really important. You said that in your opinion, the police force is a little bit larger than it needs to be for a town of our size. Okay, that's a statement that this council especially is going to want to have validated for them.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. We can do that. So we're dialing in some comparator municipalities, and we can give them numbers about this town. And I don't even know the names of our peers right now, so I'm still too new to it, right? But you know, this town is this size, has a budget of this size, has a police force of this size, and then we can do the advanced metrics, right? Which means that per citizen, you've got so many police officers per citizen.
Yeah.
This, so many police officers equals this much of your budget, right? And you can do all that, and we can do all that, and this committee can do all of that because we don't have the staff capacity to do that. So that's a science project that I need professionals such as yourselves to do. And I've done this in La Plata County successfully. Same exact kind of things with our sheriff's department. I mean, the same exact kind of things, because guess what? We just went into collective bargaining and got our first collective bargaining unit last year. I had to have all of this data ready at my fingertips. So I know what I'm asking for. Maybe I'm not being very articulate right now, but I know what I need to build the business case. Okay. Then on the pension side, defined benefit versus defined contribution, right? And anybody with a financial background looks at an organization of this size with this budget and says, are you kidding me with defined defined benefit? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Right? Okay. You
I mean,
get it.
They
You
already
get
get
it.
100% of their health benefits.
Ah, could not believe that.
Yeah.
I also couldn't sign up fast enough, right? Okay, so, okay, you get that intuitively. We have to build the case, and it's got to be unbiased, and that's going to be our challenge is, and Karina's already laughing at me because she's sick of me saying this. We have to present the information, because if we come across in this room like we are trying to nudge the council in one way or the other, then we become politicized. We have to be
Right.
apolitical. That is our job.
I'm 100% with you because
So-
we can't get sucked into that.
So we've already developed a standardized briefing template that we're going to use for all agenda items. Okay, so when LEOPS comes forward, by the time it comes forward, I want to have this council conditioned to, here is how you're going to hear a staff presentation. And here's your background, here's your financial impact. We have one counselor in particular that keeps saying, what is it going to cost us in 20 years? We need an actuary to, I'm like, we don't need an actuary. We got a long-term finance committee. They know how to do this, right? We don't have to hire someone to do it. We've got volunteers that are willing to help us solve these tough math problems, because that's all this is a math problem. So we have a vision, a mission statement for the town, and we have goals for the town, and it talks about sustainability. That's fiscal sustainability as well, in my book, right? And there's a definition, and I bet GFOA has a definition for fiscal sustainability, and I bet it's something like ensuring that revenues continue to cover your expenditures, in perpetuity. I bet it's something like that, and if it's not, I bet I could make one up that would work.
I think that was well stated.
And so if we can come in and say, council, and I don't know what the answer is going to be, and this isn't, I'm not being glib. I don't care what the answer is going to be. The math is the math, and we're going to let it tell the story. But if we can come in and say, okay, counselors, here's what it is for the 28 sworn, I think it's 28 sworn officers in the PD that we have today, and we can run actuals because we have actual numbers and we can do the math. This is what it would really cost us. These are real dollars. These aren't estimates. Okay, so this is what it will cost this year. This is your initial buy-in, and then this is what it's going to cost year over year. And you'll see one of those weird graphs that goes like this, right? And you're going to see that number go up over time. And then are revenues going to match that incline? Are they or are they not? I don't know that answer. Okay, but we're going to lay the revenue line over here, and my guess is that we're going to have something like this at a date in the future. And then we can look to the council and say, to answer your question, is it fiscally sustainable? Yes or no? Yes, for 10 years, 12 years, 15. But right around year 15 or 16, if something doesn't change, then we're going to be upside down. Our expenditures are going to exceed our revenues. Okay. Now, that's going to be a balancing act to do. to do it in a way where we don't come off as political, where we come off as we're not taking a position. We just got to paint the picture, lay out the numbers, tell the story, and let the politicians, the electeds, make that decision. And I know Karina doesn't like hearing this, but I've already said, and if they decide that that's the best thing for this community, and that's what they're going to do, then we are going to, salute sharply, and we are going to turn and we're going to go figure it out. And we're going to do the best we can to make this town successful and do it. And that's what we'll do.
So let's assume that's the case. They go for something like Leops. We show that
Mhm.
figure. And subsequent council members are now going to recognize we got ourselves into a real pickle.
Mhm.
I appreciate and agree, we need to stay apolitical. Case like that is very hard to do. We're just going to have to really have some
By
discipline.
by the way, the police department says, correctly or incorrectly, I don't know much about policing, that the size of the town does not dictate the size of the department.
Yeah,
That
I
was
remember that.
clearly asked, and I couldn't explain to you the proper method of deciding how big the department could be. But I always thought of it just as population,
Yeah, Chief Chenner did a really
Pretty
good
big.
job of,
Chief
Stressing that
General,
to us.
I loved him, still love him.
but I would say that he was
He's
an
a
excellent
professional,
salesman. Right.
take care of the department.
Yeah.
He's done a wonderful job
He
of
did.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you being apolitical, but I think there, we also have a fiduciary duty to look at long term. And this pension idea was, well, wait a minute, you cannot afford this. You don't know where this train is going to go. And I think there has to be some statistics in there or some sentences in our presentation where be careful.
Well, at the end of our agenda, a template, right? We get to make a recommendation.
Yeah,
Okay. We get to say staff recommendation is.
yes.
We get to say that, right? And that's going to be your opinions, your collective opinions and your years of experience. And that's a component that council will have to weigh, right?
Right.
You get to make a recommendation. But what we can't do is you can't paint a picture that's so lopsided one way and then the recommendation goes over here.
Right.
We've got to paint the picture fair and accurate.
Sure.
And if it's a razor thin margin, right, and you make your recommendation, that's something that the council can weigh.
Yeah.
That's something that they can factor in.
Yeah.
Now, my long-term finance committee that I had in La Plata County, I loved them and they were great. They were exactly like this committee from what I've seen from the resumes and their passion and commitment to ensuring not only that the community survives, but that it thrives
Yes.
in the future. And that's where you're going. When you say fiduciary responsibility, they're the ones that have the fiduciary responsibility. When they took that oath of office, that's their responsibility, right? And they know that, and we'll remind them of that, right? They've got to look at that long time horizon because decisions we're making today can have generational effects.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we'll get there on that. And that's where I think the long-term finance committee comes into play. And that's how I've leaned on them before. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay. So that first budget where I said, if this isn't a rainy day, I was dramatically shifting how we budgeted in the county. Like it was a huge deviation. And the board that hired me, this was their 8th budget. And this was my first budget. Okay. So I was up against it. Okay. So what I did, knowing that Nick, the new guy, isn't going to convince my 2 incumbent commissioners who were in their 8th year and their final budget, I wasn't going to sway them on my own. I brought long-term finance committee in with me. I brought them in with me. They appointed them. They trusted them. They trusted their expertise and their years of experience. And I said, I vetted the budget through long-term finance committee. I brought the chair with me. I invite the commissioners to ask questions, you know, is the budget, is it legal? Is it sustainable? What's your comfort level? How do you feel about it? Right? Because when they're making decisions, those like feelings matter. They're politicians. They're elected. So how do you feel about the budget? And fortunately, I knew the answers. That's why I brought them with me. And they said, you know, and I would love to take all the credit. Okay, but I was able to hire a finance director my first year. He came from a school background. He came from a school district. And he and I just gelled. We had a similar vision, and we aligned, and we were able to do things. So I'm making it sound like I did a lot of hands. I did. I mean, it was our finance department and our budget, but to be able to sit down and have a vision and say, okay, you know, Karina, Adam was my finance director. Help me figure this out. Here's where I want to go. How can I pay for this? How can we pay for this?
Mhm.
You know, where can we find savings? And then you're just kicking over stones and figuring it out.
So the third and last question I had,
Mhm.
it come back to me was, I guess to your management style with your staff,
Mhm.
you're the staff guy here, I guess, right? So I was on the planning commission long enough to go through 2 comprehensive plans. And I do, yeah. And I do recall, particularly on the second one, since I now had that much experience, that we were committing the town to a lot of things
Yeah.
that would require project management. And having come onto this board, we've had some discussions about that. There seems to be a lack of that. So things that the town wants to do aren't getting done.
Yeah.
And so, and then along that line, true or not, at least I heard that your predecessor was not really providing regular reviews of his staff. And it's important to, on the other hand, the staff seems to have been, they stay on a long time here. That
Mhm.
seems to be a contradiction to me, that
Mhm.
there needs to be a really good relationship between the manager and the staff people themselves, which includes periodic reviews of their work and appropriate raises in pay as a result of that. So
Yeah.
thoughts on project management and staff management?
Okay, all right. So project management, I understand what you're talking about when you're saying things aren't moving, and frankly, the money's in the budget, but it's not being spent, right? Things aren't getting done. Stormwater, in particular, back to your first point, is not getting done, right? Um, you know, COVID, for whatever reason, has had an impact on governments, and I don't know why or how. Used to be when we would release an RFP from the government, you know, to do a project, that was gold. That was a golden ticket.
Yeah.
People would line up to come be fighting for my business, right? And then something happened with COVID. I don't know what, but people stopped applying for jobs. People stopped coming to work, and vendors stopped bidding on my projects. So I just told Karina just earlier today. I mean, as an example, we had a roof project. It was huge. It was a big project. It was $1 million money in my budget, right? Government money in my budget. That used to be a golden ticket. I would have people lining up to bid on that project. We got 0 bids because that project wasn't worth it to them, because they were building $1 million mansions it was a resort and mountain community in Durango, as you're aware. So 0 bids. We even re-advertised it, and I invited the big 3. I mean, we had 3 large construction companies in the community. I invited them to come down. I personally called their CEOs and owners and said, please come do the walkthrough, come bid on my project. It's $1 million. 0 bids. Okay, so that's a component, and that's not an excuse. I'm just saying that the landscape has changed a little bit, where we're used to like churning out projects. As it relates to stormwater, and I'll use that example, I've already met with the team here last week. I've asked them to prepare for me the comprehensive list of all the stormwater projects. Okay, I need to see the list, and then I need to know where it is in the pipeline. Are we getting
Yeah, pun
easements?
intended.
What's that?
Pun intended.
Right, yeah. No, I wish. Well, I'm not that fast, I guess. But where is it in the flow chart? right? So do we need to acquire an easement? Are we drafting a scope for an RFP? Have we released the RFP? And as it turns out, we have projects that are in each of those phases. We have some that we're getting easements. We have some that we're drafting scope. We have some that we have responsive bids to. Well, that's great. Okay, let's get those moving. So I've already talked to the team and I told them, I said, frankly, this council and this committee have questioned why this money is in the budget and it's not getting spent. We've got a brand new budget. It's 10 days old today. We need to spend, there's $250,000 in there for stormwater projects. We need to spend them. We need to get projects done. Now, we need to do it thoughtfully.
Right.
Okay. You're going to give me a master list. We have problems with I&I into the wastewater treatment plants. Okay. So it's a balancing act. If we can identify which of these projects are contributing to our I&I at the wastewater treatment plant and it's low hanging fruit and we can afford it, let's put that at the top of the list.
Absolutely. Right.
Versus it's a stormwater project that maybe we're getting a lot of phone calls about, political pressure, not necessarily equating to a priority, right? So that'll be a decision for me. So bring me your list, which they're working on. I gave them the assignment last week. I'm going to get the master list. Then we're going to sit down with the team. So it'll be Public Works, wastewater treatment plant operator, and Melinda's stormwater, I believe. And let's look at these and let's look at them through the lens of which ones are contributing to another problem we're having in the town, which is the I&I, and which of those can we elevate and get those moving? And where are they in the system now? And so some are already in the system, in that workflow, and then we'll do triage on the rest of the projects and we'll try to get them moving.
Yeah, I tend to zoom in on that type of issue because if you recall, when I said I was with the local engineering firm,
Mhm.
at the time, the then Mayor Ekman had formed a committee of people, of engineers to address what was then a really big I&I problem. I mean, where am I? The bottom of the hill, Centennial,
Mhm.
that manhole would always overflow in a storm.
I've heard of this manhole. I've only been here for 3.5 weeks. You've got to be the third person that's.
It
I
behaves,
can tell you,
it behaves quite well now, but
for a brief period, I was acting town manager. That thing was going off and I'm down there and the president of the county commissioners, who I've known for years, Kelly,
yeah,
Uh,
Candace Kelly, right? Yeah.
she's there, Mr. Norris, hollering at me like like I was a foreigner or something. Oh, God, it was fun.
Yeah, but I appreciate the way you describe that because, you're always going to have more of these projects than you can afford to do at one time. So you need to figure out a way to prioritize, and having I&I be high on the list of addressing that, you are solving two problems. I like that thought process on how to prioritize.
Your second question about the management style with staff. So let me back it up a little bit. So I interviewed with a council. It's not the same council that I'm working for, which is a
Right.
little weird. But it was clear when they were interviewing me that they were very aware that the town outside this building, the town was growing. But they were concerned that the organization wasn't keeping pace commensurate with the development.
Mhm.
Okay. And so some of the things that they talked about, would you be able to tell us about that? You kind of know what they're interviewing for by the questions they ask. And so I certainly left the interview thinking they want to not necessarily increase the workforce of the staff, but increase the level of sophistication with the staff. Okay. The town is growing. Let's raise the level of professionalism and sophistication with the staff. To tie this back to your question about management style and performance appraisals. Okay. So the HR director is out this week, but last week when I met with her, we talked about performance appraisals. And so there's not a codified system in place in the town. So we're 85 employees, FTEs right now. So we're still, it's a small organization. And that's probably a little bit larger because I think it was in 23, wasn't there the big increase of a number of positions, right?
15.
Right. Great. So, I mean, you're going from 68 to, or whatever, 70 to whatever you are. So small organization. So probably not a need for that kind of system or process to be in place. So I met with Monica, the HR director, last week, and I said, I'm really excited about this because in La Plata County, I wanted to blow up that performance appraisal system. I hated it. I did a ton of research on what I wanted, started down the path only to run into a brick wall. There was a state statute that basically said I had to do some things, and they were the things that I hated, and I wasn't going to be able to change them. And so when I got here and talked to Monica, and she's like, "Well, we really don't have anything. It's a blank slate." I said, "Great. This is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to study." And I know she's registered with SHRM, which is the
Yeah.
Society of HR Management Professionals, something like that. Like I'm a member. She's like high up in the hierarchy. We get Harvard Business Review, great resource. I mean, always good articles in there. Like this is gonna be a fun science project. We're gonna dig into this and we're really gonna look at the landscape. You're probably all aware of this. So the traditional performance appraisal model in place in the United States today was born out of World War II military, based on a military hierarchy, based on a task driven, like, can you make this many widgets in this much time, right? Okay. We're still using that system. Okay. I don't think that system works in today's environment in all cases. I think it can work. We've certainly made it work. I don't think it's the right system. And I couldn't be more excited to have a blank slate in this area, that we are going to be able to create a performance appraisal system that I think can be meaningful to both the employer and the employee. Because what I have found is that the systems we use now do more harm than good. And I'll say that again, because people look at me like I got two heads. I think the system that we use now does more harm than good, because most managers will not have the hard conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So they'll say you're doing fine, or you're average, or you're even slightly above average. And if I've told you you're average for 2 years, well, it's 3 years now. I better tell you you're better than average. And then something happens. And then somebody's in my office saying, we've got to fire Mike. And the first thing I say is, well, great, go bring me his last 3 performance appraisals, because I expect that you've been telling Mike that he's not meeting the standards. Right. That's not the case. The case is Mike was good, then Mike was better, and now Mike is great, and now I want to fire Mike. Okay. And then, of course, when we go ahead and fire you, because for whatever reason you've convinced me we need to fire you, you're going to turn around and sue me. And guess what? The first thing your attorney is going to say to me is, show me the performance appraisals. And then my attorney is going to say, Chuck, you're killing me, because we're going to go in front of a jury and we're going to have on screen, was good, was better, was great, got fired. And he's probably in a protected class. Mm-hmm. And we're going to lose that lawsuit. And so that aside, I don't think that the exchanges during performance appraisals are very valuable unless your manager is really good. And there's just not a lot of managers who are really good, because, you know why? Because you're familiar with the Peter Principle, right? You're an engineer. Okay. Because we'll take someone and they do the job at the frontline level, at the entry level, and they're good. And so we promote them to the next position and we promote them, and then they're good. And then all of a sudden we have a management position open and we put them in it because they've been really good at what they do, making widgets or turning wrenches or whatever they do. And now we've promoted them to the position where they're going to fail because we've never given them the tools. We've promoted them to their level of incompetence. We haven't given them the tools, and we haven't invested in them to help them understand the difference between managing people and doing work. Yeah. And there are things as working managers. I like to believe I'm a working manager. I love turning out staff work and work product, right? Okay. But there's a difference. So you can't have it both ways. I can't complain that our managers aren't good if I don't have a mechanism to train and develop them. Okay. So we've got to do that. So that's another fun project that the HR director and I are going to work on, because we're going to, and I brought it with me. I have it. It's one of the few documents I carried into this office. It's my plan for my management academy for the town of La Plata. Not anybody, it's we're going to make it. And here are the things we're going to work on. We're going to work on culture. We're going to work on vision. We're going to work on the things like our values. Like the town has values. And so we're going to work on those. That's going to be part of our inculcation of our managers. Okay. But the tie back to performance appraisal. So that's where they go wonky. And so I did a lot of research on this a few years ago when I was trying to blow up the system in Colorado. I think some of the things coming out of Silicon Valley with the flat hierarchies are really intriguing. I don't know that I would buy into all of it, but the flat hierarchy, the instead of the once a year, which is another thing I hate. All of a sudden I got a million things going on. Oh, and wait, now I've got to stop and do, one year because I didn't have a deputy in the county. I had to do 18 performance appraisals in September, 18. And I care about them. So I'm going to do them right because I have had the training because I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm going to do them right. That takes a ton of time. And all of a sudden I'm trying to deal with collective bargaining. We're in September. I'm trying to deal with collective bargaining and I've got 18 and I don't allow my direct reports to be late. So you can bet I'm not going to be late. Oh, it was horrible.
So hopefully you can see, I've made a connection there between the projects that need to be managed.
Yep.
They need to have someone to manage them.
Yep.
And how a person at your level is ensuring that management of those managers is occurring the way we want. That might have been an inappropriate connection that I was making, but that's the connection that I made.
No, absolutely.
And I guess the last thing I would say to you is you've brought to this table a lot of passion for being here. What's your future?
Yeah. Hey, we wanted to be here, right? I mean, I joked with, so we've also created a leadership team because I think that's important. And my leadership team, we're going to meet on Monday and we're going to talk more about their role and their expectation, but it's the department heads. They play a critical role in the success of this organization. And I can't do it alone. And I need them to help me vet ideas. I'm going to come to the table with a great idea about a performance appraisal system. They're going to tell me where the holes are, right?
Right.
Okay. And I rely on that.
Good.
So the leadership team, but I joked with them because, salaries are public. And so I took a pay cut to come here. And so immediately, I don't play political games and I don't really think like that. So immediately people thought I was fired or I was being asked to leave my job. I'm like, no, I wasn't being asked to leave my job. It was a great job. I love that job. I love those people. As I told you, Joanne Spina just texted me today just to check in on me. I've been here for a month and she's, how you doing? Right. Love it. What I wanted and the reason why this seemed like the right opportunity at the time is the county was growing. It was a mid-sized county, 56,000 people. The organization was 500. I could literally drive if I wanted to go visit one of my road and bridge crews and then go visit another one. I could drive for an hour and a half, never leave the county, and to go visit 6 in one shop and 5 in another to visit a dozen of the county employees. Well, that's 2.5, 3 hours out of my day. So I couldn't do that. And I found that, and those are the things that I like to. I like connecting with the employees. I like hearing from the employees. I want to know what, I'm famous for asking them. I'll walk up to an employee and I'll say, how can I make your life better today? And boy, will they tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
And so I found I wasn't able to do that as much. And we tried some things like I'd do, I'd take questions and I'd record videos and we'd put them out but that wasn't it. So I wanted a smaller municipality. When I looked across La Plata County, we have 3 municipalities, and I saw the relationships that those managers had with their elected officials, had with their constituents. Walking down Main Ave in Ignacio, for Mark Garcia to do that, his connection with that group was very different than my connection with my constituency, which was 56,000 people. Most of them I would never meet. They would, I would never see versus, the town and city managers who they're going to know a lot of that town and they're really going to connect with that town. And I think all of us that are in this business are doing it because we love our communities and we want to see our communities be successful. And the ability to do that in a smaller municipality is what was appealing to me. So Yeah, I'm passionate. We wanted to be here. We uprooted our lives and our dogs and drove cross country and got here and jumped in with both feet. And so, I serve at the pleasure of council. I think today I'm okay. And,
We can say the same thing, right?
so, but I'm also at a point, I don't want to move again. I'll just be honest with you. It was a lot. In the military, you move, and I thought, oh, I've moved a million times. It's gonna be, I know exactly what I'm doing.
It gets old after.
It's different now. It's different. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've tended to hog the questions. So you guys have questions for Chuck?
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from this. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Do you have questions for us?
Ah, I suppose I do. I got to figure out how to frame it. So,
Bluntly.
yeah. Okay. All right. How comfortable are you going to be doing the science project and navigating around the political contention?
Well, in my mind, that's two questions.
Okay, sorry. So,
I'm willing to put in the work for the science project.
Okay.
I'm an engineer. I'm there. My kids bought me this T-shirt, retired, but I'm doing all these other things anyway. Just one more thing. The political side of that is really difficult.
I think you're gonna find we have a very talented team.
mhm.
Nicole is,
Oh, Nicole.
Yeah, I'm so
our
sorry that those two
chairperson.
are not here. Now,
Yeah.
Nicole,
yeah, the chairperson here is an amazing woman. And she has a big background on global. She looks at the macro and the micro perspective. I love spreadsheets. I love comparison. I love presentations. I love to do that. Karina would tell you, she is phenomenal, I think, as far as spreadsheets are concerned and pivot tables and all that stuff. So I really love that. And I love to, she showed me a presentation and, my comment to her was, you have to present information as they are children in a concise format that, and a picture says 1,000 words,
Mhm.
graphs says 1,000 words. And so we need to get that to them so they can make their decisions, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, we have to be careful not to be condescending.
No, true,
Yeah.
true. No, I
So-
don't mean, but
No, I know.
I,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be condescending, but what I'm saying is, um, put it in a manner that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's not only, when we're in this room, we have to remember, it's not just the
Yeah,
five.
it's the public too.
It's the
Right.
public.
So
sure.
there are people that really, we have to make sure that everybody, the information is accessible to everybody. And we don't know their background or their educational background or their comfort with numbers. And so that's why we've got to be mindful of our presentations. Words and pictures can
Yes.
help tell
Yeah.
that story.
Yes.
So
It
that's
reminds
that-
me of one
I
of
guess
my
what I'm
best
trying to
friends.
say is that it's that they can understand
Right.
the information, and
Yes,
and
sir.
that it makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Um, so challenges, I know you've only been here for how long now?
This is, well, actually, this is
Sure.
my first 5-day work week. How's that?
This is
So,
your first
yeah,
5-day
Yeah,
work week.
so there you
Okay.
go. Yeah.
So what was your number one major concern? Because for me, I had several concerns, and
Mhm.
this is my first time
Yeah.
in the finance committee
Mhm.
and first time as the town of La Plata.
Yeah, so with a financial perspective,
Yes,
okay, because there's
yes.
some other issues that the town's dealing with
Right.
right now that quickly rose to the top of my list. But from a financial perspective, having watched all the meetings, I'm concerned that we're using fund balance to cover operating expenditures. Okay, because I don't think next year's budget is going to be any less expensive. Okay, but if I tell Karina, all right, we're going to do this budget, but we're not going to dip into reserves. Okay, that's going to be a challenge. So right off the bat, I think we've got a challenging budget ahead of us. And that doesn't even start to factor in things like, any kind of merit increase, which I believe this council is going to tell us that they want. you know, economic pressures, inflation, costs of goods and materials, you know, for our, so I'm pretty worried about that, but for the interest earnings that the town has seen over the last couple of years, we would be even a little bit more upside down. And the fact that we're using,
So,
oh, and ARPA, right? Okay, so that concerns me because I think that's a little bit of an artificial life preserver and I hate to be the new person that comes in and has to paint a bad picture, but that may very well be what happens.
yeah,
If-
so one of my
That question
concerns
did
I
come
had,
up about, you know, how do we refund? How do we apply funds into the fund balance if we have to take out?
Oh, okay.
You know, previously we had ARPA to help us with that. Can't
Hmm.
count on that kind of
One
stuff.
of their tasks is to look at the reserves and make sure we have appropriate reserve balance
Mhm.
in our reserves.
Mhm.
And if we are to use them, how do we intend to replenish them to make sure we continue to have those appropriate reserves?
Right.
Yeah, I never
So-
did you.
yeah, and so one of concerns I had in looking at the spreadsheets was income tax line items.
Hmm.
It seems to me like it's going flat and decreasing. I don't know, it's because maybe there's an exodus of our residents leaving the township. I'm not sure. But it was, yeah,
We had not last year, but FY 24 in income tax and trust. That decreased significantly and it's very volatile. It's unpredictable. And actually in this budget year, I took that number out completely and just looked at the regular income tax we would get and got rid of that fiduciary income tax.
And so that
So
regular
was it-
income tax should be
Is it-
climbing, particularly
Well-
with what's happening in Pine Grove, right?
Well, yes, except for the fact that we had over $500,000 from the trust, the fiduciary income tax, that we hardly got any in FY 25. So you're gonna see a decrease in income tax because of that.
But if you, I think what Mike is saying is if you back that out in 25, okay, so that's out, we won't bring it forward in 26. With the addition of the Pine Grove families, we should see a little bit,
But if you compare it to the previous years,
right,
you're not.
right.
Because
So
the
the-
previous years included the trust income.
Yes,
Right.
and that was a huge increase. It was lower and then it suddenly spiked and now it's back down.
So to
Yeah,
your
so-
point, if we use as a key point of income, our population, it ought to be growing because we are growing as a population.
I hope.
The state actually has a really good report that they shared with me back in March when I was questioning why there's such a huge fluctuation. And they sent me this report. They also sent me their forecast through the end of the year.
Hmm.
So I intend to ask for the updated report every 6 months so I can see what's going on.
Good.
Okay, good.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, there are, line items there that I think we need to review. Or it's growing too fast in a phenomenal rate. And I would just leave it at that. That maybe you can look at it and
Okay.
see
Do you
what's
know the
going
line
on.
items that he's talking about that I
Yeah.
can, you can point to me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
They've been a concern. for a
Okay.
while. It's making sure, the problem was that nobody checked budgets. Well, this budget that was just created was the first time that questions were asked. And departments had to justify and actually look and not just have their budget and just say, okay, this is what it is. So nobody was actually evaluating budgets, and that's what we really need to do moving
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah, okay.
So if I heard you correctly, your department you got this leadership team,
Mhm.
regular meetings with them?
Every other Monday at 10, I think, in this room.
Okay, so that's good. Then you have
Mhm.
the leaders of all the staff
Mhm.
talking to each other
Mhm.
regularly.
Yeah.
it's good.
I believe that was not happening before.
Well, it was, then COVID happened and it didn't, and then it didn't for a really long time. And then once the town manager left, then it did, but it was like once a month. And now we're gonna.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you bring everybody together. So a county government is even more siloed, if you can believe it, than this town. Because I've heard that, you know, the town's very siloed, but a county government, think about the range of services. So we've got a jail, I've got detentions officers. And then I've got, you know, sheriff's deputies that are out on the road patrolling and they're county employees. I've also got the human services, social services, so adult protection, child protection, SNAP, Medicaid, right? They work over here on a different campus in a different building, but they're county employees, right? Then I've got community development and they're in a whole other building and they're doing it. And you would think that they would never cross paths. And so I actually did a presentation for the leadership team initially, and then I rolled it out. I used to meet with all the new county employees every month, just to welcome them aboard, and I would give them this presentation to show them where they fit into the org chart, but how the org chart isn't stovepipe, believe it or not. It's not. And yes, there is a point where you know, the child protection caseworker and the detentions officer in the jail, there is a point where they intersect. And I can lay it out for you. And it's fascinating when it happens. It's usually during a disaster, but it happens. So the leadership team is designed to bring everybody together to be the whole brain, as my mentor would say, to think through issues, think through new ideas, but really it's to break down barriers in communication, because I don't want to be meeting, you know, the department head when I guess here fires are not going to be a thing. We have wildland fires in Colorado pretty frequently. So when the tornado touches down, right? We don't want to be meeting each other then.
Okay. And we're all set. Do you have any more questions for us? Or
So I appreciate your time. Thanks for the invitation.
Likewise.
I'd like to come back every once in a while, maybe every other meeting or something like that, just to check in, especially for this first budget year. Because I think it'll be important that we stay close, because not only am I new, but 4 out of 5 are new. And so I think we're going to get a lot of scrutiny and a lot of questions. And I think it really adds a lot of credibility to my responses when I can say, yes, I've met with our finance team committee and they vetted it. They've looked at it. Here's what they thought, or even have Nicole come with me.
Yeah, Nicole and Karen, you do need to get to meet them. They're extremely valuable members of this committee.
okay.
All right.
Well,
Right,
thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
next item is, do we have any new business? New business? No?
When's the next meeting? Just wondering if I think I might be out of town.
It's the second Tuesday of August,
Second Thursday.
or sorry, Thursday.
Checking my calendar, but I think I'm out of town that week.
I will be here for the September one.
What?
To go to Europe.
Oh, you have to go to Europe.
Second
Is
Thursday is the 14th.
Yeah, I will be out of town from the 12th to the 19th.
So when you're gone, who's the staff support for this meeting? Why don't you, if you can put it on my calendar now, send me the invite now.
Okay.
I'll try to be here. Because right now it's probably open. And who knows what's going to happen in the next month.
opportunity.
So, because I'd like to come back and hopefully the whole committee can be here minus
that would-
Mike.
would be
And then,
great.
so maybe we don't go through the whole thing again.
Sure.
But this is recorded and I believe, can we provide the recording?
It's.
Oh, right, I've
Yeah.
watched these recordings, right. So they're posted, right.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Okay. Thank you. Thank
All
you
right,
for your
thank you.
time, Ms. Steve.
Sure. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
It's a pleasure.